And here we are. It's Car Con Carne in quarantine. It's Quarantine Con Carne. I'm James Van Alstel. Car Con Carne is sponsored tonight by C&H Financial Services. 2112 is on Chicago's lovely north side. It is a music, film, and technology incubator. Here with me tonight well, I don't know how we're seeing this on Facebook. Scott Fetters, he's the director of 2112. Rob Tovar, who runs the film division, the Hangar, and Saudia Davis, who represents the new nonprofit, the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship through 2112. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, everyone. How's it doing?
One of the common themes that I've experienced since we entered into this pandemic period and sheltering in place, from the entertainment world's perspective, from the perspective of musicians, filmmakers, just creative people in general, the need to innovate around this. The pandemic's not yielding to the way things used to be. And I think innovation is so important and so necessary. And that's why I wanted to have you three on, because you incubate businesses, you foster the entrepreneurial spirit. And I guess just to begin right out of the gate, talk about the need for innovation and what 2112 is seeing and doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're seeing our industry obviously getting hit one of the hardest with, between the creatives, hospitality, live entertainment. We're always part of a situation to innovate, to address and to bring people together. But, now is a very unique time where a lot of us were poised and small businesses were poised to shift quickly, to address. We're seeing a major shift with obviously the live streaming, everything that we're dealing here with media, with live events going away, with an opportunity to come up with completely new business models. So I think it's something that a lot of our businesses are taking a different approach and responding differently, but everybody has to think differently in the new times and react and respond to the current situation.
So as I mentioned, 2112 is a music, film, and tech incubator. If you want proof, every time Scott turns on his mic, there's live music happening right behind him. It's not the elephant in the room, it's just the musician in the room.
We're just wrapping up. There's this is actually a perfect example of how do people shift. This never happened before in our space, but we currently have two artists that are trying to figure out how to make some money and live stream. So we have our new main stage next door. There's an artist streaming now, and there's someone wrapping up just behind me, wrapping up hopefully here in the next couple of minutes.
So what besides that, what other stuff have you seen that's been kind of inspirational or that you've taken lessons from during this period? What kind of innovations, what kind of creative thinking around this have you seen? And I should probably point the direction to Saudia and Rob, since Scott is in the belly of a live performance right now.
Actually, and I was going to hand it over to Saudia, but one of the things that I guess timing, during the pandemic is we were literally in the midst of announcing the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and Saudia had joined the team. It was taken over that helm. And then we got slapped with this thing called COVID. And that's where I'm going to hand it over to Saudia, because it just it was a very nice transition that segued into what we wanted, the CCE program to be, encompassing various disciplines of art, and how the pandemic caused us to shift into digital pretty quickly. And I tell you, if you've seen some of the programming that she's put together, I mean, Rick Bayless has been, we've been doing some great stuff, but it's covered every aspect of it, from food to music to film. And then she sprinkled it in there with fashion and just a little bit of all. So Saudia, take it away, because it was a perfect segue into how we reacted quickly and were able to adapt in this very unusual time.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, and thank you, Scott. I'm so fortunate to have an incredible team that supports what I do with the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, but who brought me along for the ride. And who knew, right, that the world would change so quickly. So we launched in February. And one of the things I think it's important is that the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship empowers creatives at all levels with the knowledge, skills, and relationships necessary for business success. And so when we say that, you know, it's like, it's not the how-to, but for those of you who've been to 2112 and know that there's a main stage that can seat up to 150 people, we had to shift, like quickly shift, everybody's using the word agile, to be able to take what was once an event, right, and then migrate it to a virtual platform.
Yeah.
So I told Scott, you know, I'm really, really serious about like wanting to make it as feel as much as like people are in person. So Instagram was 1-to-1. Facebook Live at the time, only back in February, was like you had to be in the room with everybody else to capture and go live. So I did some research. I was like, I want people to log on from different places. Friends at Facebook were like, you could use, there are softwares out there that allow you to have multiple people on screen. And I wanted the chats. I wanted to feel like, okay, if we can't go to 2112 for an event, how do people just show up? And because CCE is global, all of a sudden my excitement for wanting to not only join the organization, but Scott knows to reach out to friends in LA and to reach out to friends in New York and Austin, Texas, and all over, all became possible with this virtual platform. So we were fortunate to find an operator, if you will, someone in the industry. If you think of broadcast news, it would be like actually a producer, a showrunner, and an operator, a switcher, all moving pieces. So that we now have the ability and have since maybe end of February, we've now run 9 CCE global talks to be able to carry from what was in person with an audience, but now live. And you know, the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship represents 9 sectors of the creative arts industries. So it's been really, I hope, fulfilling for the entrepreneurs out there to see themselves or to see the possibility of what can be done by us coming to them virtually. Scott and Rob, we miss each other, right? But these are the ways that we're able to engage. And I'll say one other thing, and that is that, you know, at first it was just, how do we deliver the content to our audience? Now, after doing so, we realized that now with our Sling Studio there, we can still use this platform to broadcast live, even when we're back in the physical space. And that's huge because we'll still maintain that audience that we developed in this time, but also for people who are not so excited to come back into the space, they still have a place to land and learn something and hopefully be inspired, because out of the most dark times, some of the most creative film projects, music projects, visual art, fashion, it all happens.
And you said it, and I've had this discussion with plenty of musicians. A lot of people, you know, this is this shared collective trauma we're in. COVID-19 is this awful, emotionally debilitating, sometimes physically debilitating situation we're in. And a lot of people, and I get it, are just stymied by it. They're paralyzed. It's just tough to work through. But as a creative, you kind of need to just drive right on through this. You got to figure out a way around it, because I don't know what things are going to look like 2 months, 4 months, 6 months from now. But you need to start figuring out what the new way is before things start going back to the old ways. And I think what you just said, take the lessons from what we're doing now into the future. Figure out what those new ideas are and find ways to thread them through whatever's next. I think that's so critical. Rob, tell me about what's going on with the film business.
We don't know. Well, you know, states are starting to open up. So, you know, LA put out their things. I think this week is when they're up and going, and there's a lot of restrictions. Chicago announced we're going to start giving permits out as early as the 15th. That's going to be touch and go, because it's production for 10 people or less. And if we, anyone that understands film or even a small music video, your hair and makeup team could be 10 people just by itself. So I kind of like to align myself when it comes to what's happening in film. That's also going to transition into events. So, you know, anything like a Lollapalooza or a Live Nation, or even some of the larger venues that are out there, just earlier today, I was having some large panel discussions with the Latino Alternative Music Conference, which is running right now. And that's the topic. What's going to happen? What are tours going to look like? What's film going to look like? What are music videos going to look like? So for now, we're happy to say that in Chicago, the 15th, we're going to start giving permits out. Hoping we could pick up a couple things. Our hangar, as you see behind me, the hangar, this is a project that was, hangar turns 4 this year. Lots of great things have happened in the hangar since we launched that. I've had Showtime, CBS Redline filmed with me. We had Disney. I thought when we hit Showtime, me and Scott were high-fiving. And when Disney came in, it's like, wow, we actually got Disney. So we had a great we house production. They spent about 3 months with us over the winter. And we were having conversations for other projects, but here we are. We find ourselves in an unknown territory. However, lots of really cool creatives are out there, and they're really working on some really neat projects. So I personally cannot wait what's going to come of all this. Early on, Saudia did a really great thing about focusing on the hangar and projects that have been there, but utilizing producers that have worked in Chicago, and they're all working on really neat concepts. And I cannot wait to see what these folks come up with. So stay tuned. I think COVID and pandemic is really some cool movies are gonna come out there. I refuse to watch anything that's like Contagion or I'm leaning more towards comedy. But
yeah, a lot of people are like the guy who created Black Mirror said, you know what, I'm done making this show for a while. It's a little too life accurate.
Yeah, it's too life accurate, too gothic, just too depressing. So yeah, it's fun stuff. The hangar, believe it or not, it's actually, I'm not at liberty to say who was in there, but that thing was actually booked for the whole year. That changed quickly on us.
Yep.
We're looking to start something in the next few weeks, and then lead into fourth quarter, and some of that might bleed into 2021. But it just depends on what happens with this silly little germ that we call the COVID.
One thing I wonder, and again, going back to music, because that's just a comfortable place for me to default to, as musicians talk about not being able to tour and just the way things are so radically different, it seems to me like the conditions are right for a music video renaissance as a way of communicating, as a way of expressing one's art. It seems like here's the opportunity. You can't go on tour, but you can put your creative self in a video. Have you seen any of that? Have you felt any of that?
I think we're all smiling, so we just want to burst out. Like I think we all have.
Yeah,
it just seems natural. Like let's see like an MTV 24-hour streaming service, like something like that for the modern day. I think we're ready for it.
well, I mean, there's concerts from your couch, or concerts from our couch, our buddy Jeff Becker. So you're seeing a lot of innovation around that. You have musicians who have figured out how to collaborate virtually.
Yeah.
We produced just last week over the weekend. We had a video village on Zoom, watching the person, making sure that we got the footage that we needed on Sunday, right?
That's awesome.
So it is happening, and everybody is figuring out how to make it safe. We had one producer talk about how, although it's 50 or 10 or less, everything is becoming more efficient also, because the amount of people that are not, it's not possible to all be together.
Now that Scott is somewhere more quiet and secluded, and I enjoyed seeing you walk through the facility. This is a perfect segue, because the facility of 2112, it's vast, it's enormous, it's inspiring. If you are creative, if you work on that side of the world, it is inspiring to walk through those halls. I figured this would be a good time, Scott, for you to kind of explain a little more about what 2112 is, who's housed there, what kind of businesses are there now, what it's like to work out of there, and so on.
Yeah, no, I was good. I thought about that as I heard one song starting behind me, and I said, it'd be a good time to give a little mini tour here. But yeah, so we launched 5 years ago here. Started very music heavy, and really the initial concept was very music focused, because a need that we identified. I was working with Paul Natkin with the Chicago Music Commission, and he had a economic impact study commissioned. And we realized Chicago was the third largest creative economy, but it really, in the country, but it wasn't really getting that credit. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And we, initially we thought it was a marketing issue. Started working with city and state governments, spent a couple of years saying, here's the information on paper. We need to start telling the world about Chicago, and realized it was a much bigger problem through that process. And the problem was fragmentation in the market. Is there was so much here, but nobody knew each other. Nobody was working together. So we said we need to figure that out. We need to bring people together. We need to raise awareness locally, not nationally and internationally, just of everything that's happening here. And that started with, it took us years to figure out the physical concept. It started with monthly educational programming and networking, evolved into, we got a grant from Boeing to launch chicagomusic.org, trying to create this online hub and this platform to bring everyone together virtually. Realized, neither of those were the answer. I had met, during that process, met the owners of Fort Knox Studios, which at the time was a 40,000 square foot band rehearsal facility, 92 room rehearsal facility, but they were sitting inside of 160,000 square feet.
I went there once a few years ago. I only recently found my way out.
You know what? It just popped up in one of my my social memories too. That it was 5 years ago to the day, a couple years ago, that you were here with Local H on that Live at Knox performance.
We did a few of those. That was fun.
That long, yeah. So initially, and when I met the owners of Fort Knox, they were thinking about expanding. They had a significant waiting list for their band rehearsal space, and their thought was just to make the biggest, nicest rehearsal facility anywhere in the city, in the country. Then we started talking a lot more about this opportunity we have with such a massive facility in 160,000 square feet, and what that means. And we said we have this opportunity to change Chicago's music community and to bring people together, and instead of expanding band rehearsal, to create this ecosystem for collaboration. So they expanded then into 32 music production studios, 6 recording studios, live sound production companies. And right around the same time, we came up with the idea of the incubator. So we launched here 5 years ago. Again, initially really focused on the music industry, but then we realized as we started having conversations with other industries, there was so much similar needs, so much opportunity for film and video, for theater, for dance. So we really expanded the concept and said, let's focus on creative industries. So 2112 alone, we have 120 companies now, and that's a mix of band management, entertainment law, video production, graphic design, anything that you can imagine. And the beauty and kind of when you were talking, we started off with the concept of innovation too. There's no better way to innovate and really to get the feedback that you need by being surrounded by 140,000 square feet of industry.
The networking aspect for any creative, to have that immediate access to, oh, that woman is an entertainment lawyer. Oh, there's someone who does booking. Like, just having all that institutional knowledge feet away is so valuable. And it's, you don't have to Google it. You can talk to real people doing real life stuff right there. And they're all, every time I've been there, the spirit of 2112 has been very generous and very, very much a community.
It's an ecosystem, truly.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we were trying to shift the mentality a little bit. That was the other thing. It wasn't just that, that people didn't know each other, but inherently with that, as you're spread out and isolated and you think there are limited opportunities, it really stifles collaboration, because people become very protective of what they have, and they think this is the one piece of business in Chicago. I'm not letting you know about it because you're going to take it. But in reality, the more we work together, the more we come together, and people have started to realize that and change and share. Everybody grows when everybody works together.
Totally true. So you have how many businesses in there right now?
120. That's just in 2112, our member companies, and then in addition to the bands and studios, there's additional businesses in Fort Knox as well.
That's awesome. And resources a go-go. And so the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship is a not-for-profit. Explain the difference in business model, because I'm not sure how that all works with 2112 and in and around. So Saudia, if you could explain a little more.
Sure. I mean, and happily to have Scott jump in as well. So 2112 is for profit. So of course, it's really kind of interesting where we're new, and there are established relationships that already exist with regards to 2112's partnerships. There are organizations who would have loved to donate, right? So as a nonprofit in the process of a 501c3, we are fiscally sponsored by the Arts Alliance Illinois. And that's fantastic because that allows for us to operate as a nonprofit and still have the expertise actually to lean on as we build and as we grow. But one of the things that we were advised to share, and I made this part of our narrative, is that when you're a new non-for-profit, banks and sponsors and funders are a little concerned about maybe making that give because they're not sure of your sustainability.
Sure.
So what we actually like to say is that we are the birth of, or we are sort of created up out of 2112. And so with that, we carry the legacy forward into marginalized communities and communities that generally don't have the type of resources that one would find at 2112 or have the capacity to pay for. So one of the other things about our nonprofit, which is really exciting, is that we have a diversified scholarship, which allows, and when people think of scholarships, they sometimes think of youth. But again, the CCE, Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, is just that. It's a center for creative entrepreneurs, people who are going into business, right? So that scholarship is for individuals who could be anywhere from 17 to 75, who have decided to create something. So we are a charitable foundation, and for that reason, the gifts and the sponsorship is tax deductible. So that's going to be the difference between the for-profit and the nonprofit.
One thing that's interesting as I'm talking to the three of you, there seems to be, I mean, we're in kind of a shitty time right now, but there definitely seems to be a sense of optimism and hopefulness, which I think is a good message for any of the creatives watching this or listening to this. I think it's something we need to hear. And coming from you guys, I take it as the gospel.
Yeah, I think that's something that, we were trying to say early on to our members as well is, there's a way to get through this. There's a way to get through anything. But we have to work together. We have to share information. We have to plan appropriately. And we've been trying to spread that word as much as possible. At the beginning, a lot of people, the idea of let's wait, let's sit this out and see what happens the next couple months. And then hopefully things return to normal. And so if you do that, you're setting yourself up poorly for success here. But as long as you're planning on, yes, things may come back in 3 months. Now we know that, with live events and a lot of the industries that we're working with aren't really coming back, likely till next year. But let's have a plan for each of those scenarios. And yes, let's hope that things come back in 3 months. But let's plan for it not coming back for 1.5 years and 2 years, and make sure there's a model that you're set up for success with any of those scenarios.
So for a fledgling business, someone who has the great idea, someone who's going to transform dance, film, music, the creative world, can they take a tour? Is that off limits now? I mean, how do they see the facility?
We officially opened back up this Monday. So we are accepting. We would ask, obviously, we're adhering to all of the standards and guidelines and providing a safe space. That was one thing I wanted to mention too with safety. Rob, being the entrepreneur that he is, actually launched a business 7 years ago that's proved to be very valuable, sterile environments, which I'll let him explain a little bit more in a second. But he sprayed, and now all of the surfaces within Fort Knox and 2112 are protected with an electrostatic shield for the next 12 months.
Rob, are you a time traveler?
Say that.
Like,
Yeah.
did you come from the future with knowledge of what would happen this year? And did you develop something knowing this was coming?
7 years ago. So I have a, yeah, believe it or not, I have a chemical background. I spent some time with one of the world's largest raw material distributors in the planet, and it was very successful. But something always kept pulling me towards the hospitality and event industry. That's how I met Scott. But about 7 years ago, I got involved with a group, and funny story. Prior to that, they came to me with another idea, and I laughed at them, and they made millions. And then so when they came back to me the second time with another idea, I says, whatever it is, I'm in. And it was this long-lasting antimicrobial. There's similar products out there right now. Ours has an efficacy of up to a year. Depends on your abrasion factor. And it was kind of a hard sell. You tell people that I'm going to put something on your surface and it's going to stay there. And it's going to, as long as you clean and do what you're supposed to do, it's going to continue to stay there and mitigate germs for up to a year. So people would say, yeah, whatever. The White Sox were one of our first clients here in Chicago. Through the years, I did a bunch of, University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, a lot of clients, but it was never really something that was sustainable until now.
Yeah.
So,
oh man.
Yeah. So when this thing hit 3 months ago, yeah, we've been busy. Fortunate enough to have put some artists that are out there that all of a sudden income stopped. Actually put a couple bartenders to work as well. And it's a two-step process. So I've been fortunate to provide some level of income to some of my favorite people on the planet, which is the creative industry. Because it just stopped. So yeah, so just imagine if you're in your studio and that microphone that you talk to every day, if we spray that microphone, at least I'm trying to prevent cross-contamination from surface to surface. So that's something really cool, but we could talk about that another time. But yeah, as a serial entrepreneur, landing, knowing Scott for almost over a decade now. But when I first stepped foot in Fort Knox in 2112, I never left.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I never left. And I've always had these little side businesses that, oh, look what we get to do now. So besides movies, there you go.
All right. So the website is 2112 Inc. 2112inc.com for people to learn more.
And for Creative Entrepreneurship.
CCEglobal.org. If you can't read that on the screen, CCEglobal.org, the not-for-profit Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, 2112inc.com. Before I cut you loose, before I say farewell to the people watching on Facebook Live, including the handsome Martin Atkins, anything else you want to get out there?
I would like to mention, Saudia may have been raising her hand for the same thing. We'll see. But as far as the CCE Global website, we have been aggregating, and that's part of our mission to aggregate and amplify all of the existing resources that exist, through our partners. So I think this week alone, we had 12 to 15 workshops. We've been populating our calendar with free business workshops for creatives on cceglobal.org. To get back to the last question as well, we are open 9 to 5. Feel free, all of our contact info is on the website. Our emails are on there. If you want to contact with any questions or to come in for a tour. Currently with shortened hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, we're here. Such a fantastic facility, such a fantastic resource and community. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank Scott, Rob, Saudia. Thank you so much for doing this. I want to thank everyone who's been watching on Facebook Live. And see, Brady just says, I got to intern at 2112. Very lovely time. Look at that. Martin likes his background too.
Thank you, Martin, for being one of our CCE advisors.
This is the man.